What's going on, guys? So Micron just came out with their Q3 earnings, and it pretty much turned everybody's opinion on the stock upside down. Everybody seems to now be upgrading the company. The company was just up over 13% in a day, and everybody seems to think that the worst is behind Micron. Now, there are a couple of things in this earnings report, both good and bad, that I really wanted to go into in this video and kind of give my overall opinion on what's going on with the company and in the semi space in general, because there were a lot of things that were kind of confusing to me in this earnings report based off of how the market reacted to it, and I definitely think that there are some things that I think are more, important in the company that people didn't focus on, whether or not that they were good or bad. There are some good things that I think kind of got shafted, in the, all the things talking about Huawei, which I'll get into in a little bit. But there are a couple of things that I really don't think the overall market's looking at right now, because I think the whole trade war issue and with Huawei is just kind of being like, the buzzwords of the hour. And I think that that is where pretty much everybody's attention is currently. So I'm going to be going into all of that and pretty much giving my opinion on, what the market did and then what the company did. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and without further ado, let's get in the video. Now, to start things off, Micron did beat on both their top line and on their bottom line guidance. Granted, both of these numbers were down year over year and quarter over quarter, but everybody just kind of assumed that the worst of the worst was going to be happening with Micron and the majority of other semiconductors right now due to, global factors that are, Chinese economy is slowing down, global growth is slowing down, demand and everything is slowing down, and also not to mention that all of the different trade war issues that are kind of getting re-ramped up, and, the newest being the whole United States ban on Huawei, which was not really that much of a big deal, 2 quarters ago. And now Micron is starting to kind of rebalance from all of that, and I'm going to kind of explain why exactly that happened. And the big thing to keep in mind with it is that you have to realize that it is not Micron that isn't doing business with Huawei. Micron doesn't care about who they do business with. It is because the US is putting sanctions against Huawei and not allowing chip manufacturers to sell US-based technologies to Huawei. However, Micron is a multinational corporation. They have many facilities that they just recently opened up, say in Taiwan, Japan, and many in China, and they are able to take the patents and the technologies that they have, kind of written off in other countries, say such as in China, that were, kind of such a big issue about a year ago with China stealing their IP and then all of that causing a lot of issues. They're able to take that type of technology and now pump it to Huawei, even though they can't give them their entire portfolio. And now this is something that the average investor was not really thinking about. Everybody kind of assumed, okay, there's going to be zero revenue coming in from Huawei probably over the next couple of quarters. But Micron is saying that, okay, while our Huawei revenue is definitely not going to be what it was, it isn't going to be as bad as, say, writing it all off. So they didn't give exact numbers on how much of their overall revenue from Huawei on a customer basis they would be retaining. However, they did say that it was starting to improve, and they did actually already start to gain some of that revenue back. So, it's in the sense of just looking at purely at the trade war and what's going on with Huawei as an individual company, Micron definitely isn't in the worst possible situation. Now, keeping that in mind, Micron is definitely not out of the woods yet. When you look at their NAND supply and their DRAM supply versus the amount of demand that's going on, they are still, kind of hefty in terms of their current inventory. And when you look at the fact that no one's really, other semiconductors are also reporting relatively weak numbers, and they're all expecting, on the back half of this year, the first half of 2020, that people are going to start, really putting more money back into these data centers, cloud farms, and things like that. I still definitely don't think the company's out of the woodwork yet. However, the company, based off of, the kind of the trends that they saw and that what they expected to be in a decline the past quarter was right in line with what they expected, they do believe that they can, kind of be reassured that, prices are going to kind of stabilize over the next quarter or two, and then it's going to slowly start to rebound from there. Now, how much validity is into that statement? Now, obviously no one can tell. However, there are a couple of things that you really need to be keeping an eye out for to really, kind of validate what Micron is anticipating into the future. Now, again, what I talked about, say when I was talking about how Micron is probably going to be, beaten down heavily this past year as it was, because when you look at companies like AMD, Intel, Nvidia, and they're all reporting weak guidance going forward, generally those companies are forward and leading indicators to what is going to be going on with Micron. So if you're looking at that, that short-term type of rebound play on Micron, and you think that, okay, this quarter's, the end of the end, and you think that, okay, everything's going to be going better from here on out, I would definitely focus on what type of volume those companies are shipping out, and also, do those companies expect that those volumes to, kind of stabilize and increase in the future? Because again, what I talked about, if you just think about it like you're building a computer, you don't buy more RAM, assuming you build a beefy computer, you're gonna max out your RAM initially at purchase. So the only reason why you would buy more RAM is when you're increasing your data center. And you're only gonna increase your data center if you can buy the CPU that's gonna be running it and the GPU that's going to be, kind of crunching all the numbers down for you. So those two factors really need to start picking up in volume in order for Micron to really get the benefit from that. That's one of the reasons why Micron is significantly more, volatile to these types of macro trends than those other companies, is because Micron is kind of, the one that, like, depending if those companies are doing really well, Micron will do extremely well. But if those do pretty bad, Micron will do extremely bad. So that's just something you really need to keep in mind when you attempt to forecast a company like Micron. It's a commodity and it's directly reliant on the sales of other cyclical types of products. But now on the other side, there is something that I really wanted to focus on right now that, as a tech enthusiast, I think is really cool, and I don't think that a lot of the market is really talking about it, and that is Micron talking about their developments in DDR5. Now currently, if you go out and buy new RAM for any new rig, you're going to be buying DDR4, or any DDR4 variant for, like, say, a microcontroller or a smartphone or anything like that. You're going to be buying the 4 variant on the, the DIMM. However, Micron is already making massive developments that they kind of like teased about in that new technology. And now when you look at it, every time that we switch in DRAM, standards, when we switched to the DDR4 standard back in, I think, like 2013, 2014, around there, it took about a couple of quarters of a lag effect when this new technology came in, and then they started booming in that, development growth. Because once you kind of bring on the new, standard for memory, now you need new chipsets. Now you need new, graphics cards to support this. You need, increased GDDR, say 7 now. And this pretty much opens up a whole new gateway for people needing to really upgrade their computers, especially for all these massive data centers and cloud farms, if they want the fastest of the fast. And when you look at the really big names in the space, they're paying whatever price they can get just to get a little bit extra performance, because every couple of $1,000s they put in, they know that they're getting a long-term, say 5-10 year lifespan out of it that is just going to be at an increased yield. So most companies are willing to spend more money if it kind of directly improves their top and bottom line as well. So that factor, I think, is definitely going to be, kind of the rebirth of Micron. It's kind of similar to what happened, in 2014 and 2015 when the whole memory market was in kind of a decline. DDR3 was at the point where it was extremely cheap to make. Everybody was able to make it. Their margins were getting lower because they kept having to drop prices, as they are currently doing with DDR4. But once they kind of switched to that new standard, it all kind of revamps. They get a couple of golden years of like massive margins and massive revenue coming in, and then it all kind of dissipates. And that's kind of the cyclical nature of a technology company, where they're pretty much constantly obsoleting themselves when they make advancements. So I personally think that that is going to be the biggest growth driver for Micron over the next couple of years, and that's why you definitely need to keep in mind when these companies are going to be, implementing this model, you need to figure out, like, okay, are they actually buying the server CPUs to, implement that new technology? So that's why, for example, AMD's been coming out with amazing, cost, price to performance type of products over the past couple of years, but most of the really big named companies are still largely going with Intel, because even though Intel to a price to performance ratio isn't as good as AMD, Intel is still flat out marginally better than AMD. So, they'll pay double the price for, say 10% increased performance, because they know that they're going to be getting a much larger raw dollar value because of that extra 10 performance. So this is kind of going back to what everything I talk about with all the semiconductor companies, is that you really need to focus on what, kind of the leading companies in that space are doing. Say with Intel and AMD and NVIDIA, you need to be looking at the fabs and all of the other companies that are making these chips for the companies. In Intel's case, they kind of own most of their fabs, but, now they're sourcing possibly to Samsung. So, you really need to think about other companies and what that company's doing to see, okay, when does the ball start rolling and when do I want to get in? You don't want to jump into a company just because you think, things are going to start looking better in a couple quarters. You really need to back that up with data from other companies that show that this trend is happening. And now, so what is my overall takeaway on Micron, and do I think that the company should have shot up 13% today, based off of these numbers? Honestly, I don't think the quarter was that great. I don't think it was that bad. I think it was, as the company said, it was reasonably in line with what they expected. And I think that everybody thinks that because it was in line with what they expected, they're going to follow along to Micron's script and think that, okay, second half of this year, first half of 2028, Micron's going to go back to making gobs of money, and we need to start pumping into the money. Just got a couple of upgrades today. Now the average price target is between $50 and say $55 a share, which is about a 40 to a 50% increase from current share prices. So everybody's like, woo, jump in. And I would definitely think that things are, going in the right direction for this type of situation. I do think that this wasn't necessarily like the big recession cyclical downturn that everybody was anticipating, a year ago. However, that is still on the table as a probability and is something that could possibly happen. But it also is a little too premature right now to just kind of jump on the bandwagon, in my opinion, and expect that, okay, this is the bottom. Now we're going to ride Micron back up to the top. And that's something you really need to think about. Like, when you invest in a semiconductor company, it requires constant research, and you need to have your finger on that market constantly, because you need to be able to feel the pulse of when one of the major players is starting to weaken, to know how to reposition yourself accordingly, whether to take advantage of that weakness when the stock price drops, or to sell out of your, position in a company like Micron that, is kind of rebounding because of it. But then once they start to release weaker numbers, as we found out with Intel, and I talked about how Intel, they released shaky numbers, so you need to pull out. And then Micron got slammed really hard because of it. You really need to keep your finger on the beat with this type of industry. It's not like, say, a Starbucks or a Coca-Cola, where it's essentially the business itself isn't changing much, the landscape isn't changing much. As long as consumers are happy, they'll spend money. That isn't the case with semiconductors. So in today's recent price movement, I'm a little confused. Flat out, I'm very confused with why the company reacted the way it is and why investors are so bullish now. I understand, obviously, things aren't doomsday as they believed, so a lot of that is now getting unpriced into the company. But I definitely don't think companies should start, increasing their price targets on the stock, because feasibly, they're losing more money. They're losing margins. The margins are weakening, not by a large amount, but they were down about 3 basis points or so. So, it's not like the company's, in, growth mode right now. The company is possibly at the beginning of a rebound. And now, in my opinion, before you jump into this type of company, you should really wait for that rebound to solidify. Yes, you won't pick the bottom, and yes, you're not going to know exactly when, when to get out and things like that. But in my opinion, it's too difficult to try to time the bottom and try to time the top. So just look for that trend to really solidify. And I think that if you are interested in Micron, definitely focus on the other major semiconductor plays. As soon as they start saying that, okay, things are definitely reverting now, and our products are now going to be flying off the shelf, that is when I would start moving more money into Micron, in my personal opinion. And now, as a full disclosure, I am not personally invested in Micron at this moment. So I did not get the 13% bump today, unfortunately. I did sell out of Micron. I sold out of pretty much almost all of my semiconductor stocks back when Intel gave their previous earnings guidance, and then continued to, kind of lead to a weakening corner, pressures with that, slowdown in demand and everything like that. That signaled to me like, okay, the bulk of the semiconductor, industry is not headed for a rebound yet. I definitely think Intel is going to be a leading factor in that case. So I did sell out. Do I think that I'm going to be buying Micron now? Currently, no. If I had hold on to Micron and I, was still in this boat right now, would I sell out right now? No. The only reason why I sold out was because things were definitely, from one of the leading indicators, in my opinion, of how I view this space, things are relatively weak, and it's going to take a longer period of time for it to revert. Now, that is because I am so in depth with this industry and because I'm so comfortable with it, I do more of a swing trade type of phenomena in the companies that I think are good long-term holds. And now, you might think of that and be like, okay, well, that's not investing, that's trading and speculating. And there is a good chunk of speculation with it, don't get me wrong, but I also think that in these companies, I know who are going to be the winners in the long term, but based off of, different things that are going on, the prices are going to be fluctuating with it. And now I don't have an account size to where I can really manipulate options and, buy, short-term options to kind of take advantage of the price without actually having to sell my underlying that way. So what I do is I just essentially swing trade these companies. That's just kind of my overall opinion of it. And I know some of you guys are just extremely long-term investors. Some of you guys are day traders. I get that. But that's just kind of my opinion on this individual space. If it's a company like, say, a Coca-Cola or things like that, when I invest in a company that I know is non-cyclical and it has a consumer base and it's going to have roughly the same demand time in and time out, regardless of what the overall market does, that's a company I can just straight up buy, hold on to it, take in the dividends, and, carry on. But with a semiconductor company such as Micron doesn't pay a dividend, it's extremely cyclical in a cyclical industry, I definitely think you need to be extremely more active with those types of positions. So that is just my overall takeaway from Micron currently. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And again, if you guys stuck around to the end of the video, make sure to smash that like button and make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get updates whenever I put out a video. And let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. It really helps me out. It, kind of stimulates communication in this, community. I know back about a year ago when I was really active putting out videos, I was having conversations with people for hours upon end on some of my videos. So, if you guys want to really start ramping that back up again, make sure to throw some stuff down in the comment section down below. And thank you guys again for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.